Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me this morning. So today we're going to be going through our Cyber Essentials Plus webinar for applications. And joining me on today's call, you're going to have Michelle Laverick from Droplet and myself, Mark Churley from App Technology. And what we're going to be doing is showing you through how you can use Droplet and containerization to both manage your aging legacy applications, but also more specifically how this can be a part of locking them down for Cyber Essentials Plus compliance. In our last webinar, what we did is we walked you through how we could use our CEP packaging process and our service to keep your modern applications compliant, but we're aware that many organizations still have aging applications in their estate, potentially running with some technical debt. By aging applications, what we're specifically talking about here are applications that might be in your estate where there's no upgrade path available, potentially applications that might be supporting machinery or hardware, or potentially things that have been written in the past where there isn't a direct upgrade available to make them potentially Windows 11 compliant, where it's costly to recode them. And sometimes the value of your existing application, it may deliver everything you need for the business, and the cost of recoding is not going to be a viable piece. And potentially what you can also have here is applications which are due for decommissioning, but you still need to make sure that you're going to be Cyber Essentials compliant for the 1 or maybe 2 years it might take to get those applications decommissioned. And what we're going to show you today is how Droplet can be part and parcel of that strategy. Beyond purely the Cyber Essentials Plus compliance, what other benefits you might get in this space are potentially taking your legacy applications from their current existing aging physical hardware and potentially putting them into the cloud. So changing up your agility, looking at a cloud-first approach. It will also potentially help you simplify your support model for these applications, providing you with one method for supporting all of your aging applications across your estate, should you have more than one. Hopefully getting rid of the need for gold stock. So some of our customers have aging hardware and they have to keep hold of correct gold stock parts and supplies for that machine so that if it breaks, they're in a position to clean it up and repair it. Allowing you to run those applications securely. So just because you've got an aging application doesn't mean that you need to be running it in an insecure way. And also, one of the other side benefits here is that some organizations, there are applications or services in the estate where the media to install them, the know-how of how they're put together is gone. We can help you work with those applications to help bring them into Droplet and then host them so that you don't have that risk in the estate anymore. So what I'll do now is I will hand over to Michelle. Michelle will walk you through the Cyber Essentials links to Droplet, and then we'll walk through a demonstration of how Droplet can help you in this space. So Michelle, I will just make you post. There we go.
Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay, so thank you for tuning in for the webinar. It's going to be a brief, short and sweet overview of our product and a quick demo. Our strapline for Droplet is compatibility, security, and compliance. So we were built from day one for running legacy applications. We witnessed in a lot of large enterprises and smaller organizations as well, the real sticking point for digital transformation efforts and upgrading onto the latest platforms were often legacy applications. These legacy applications are often too costly to upgrade and may need to persist in the organization either for compliance reasons from a data compliance perspective, or simply are so embedded into the organization's workflows that they can't easily be replaced. Often projects to replace these legacy systems become cost prohibitive for the number of users who want to have access, but also those projects can overrun and go overrun on budget as well. because we were designed to run legacy, security was a paramount aspect of our technology, because often the bad guys out there, the hackers, the phishing people, will target legacy components where they know there may be a lack of patch management or simply no more patches anymore because that software is no longer even available from the original vendor. By combining our compatibility and security together, what we hope to achieve is compliance, specifically along the kind of NIST and Cyber Essential compliance standards that many organizations have to seek. Year on year, those criteria get stronger and stiffer and harder to meet. And year on year, it becomes a factor for a lot of organizations that they need that compliance to even operate in the various sectors. So if you do any work with government or local government, one of the things they'll be looking for is to show that you are Cyber Essentials compliant. On the subject of Cyber Essentials and taking a very security kind of focus for this particular webinar, something that not everybody is aware of is the change recently to the Cyber Essentials definitions, or what's commonly called the V3 standard. This was released in April of this year, and we saw a very significant shift on what that compliance standard would accept as appropriate protection for your EUC environment generally and software generally. So the main thing that came out of the update is sandboxing and packaging the software. The likes of MSI Exec App Attach, various app laying and app volumes that have been around for some time. I'll be honest here, Droplet's competitors would no longer be seen as appropriate solutions to protect potentially unsafe code. From that update, the key takeaway for us was a term that they coined called a true isolation layer. They basically said, unless the environment provides a true isolation layer within which that application runs, it would no longer qualify as being Cyber Essentials compliant. And that's exactly what Droplet does. In fact, we've gone so far to starting to use that term in all our collateral and all our material and all our briefings, because it's a kind of buzzword within the industry right now, being a true isolation layer. We regularly get pen tested by third parties, usually driven by customers who want to sign off their environments that they've had built with us and in conjunction with us. And we've had a number of pen testers more or less say, in a kind of blanket way, if the app is in Droplet, it will pass Cyber Essentials. As you might know, Cyber Essentials themselves don't actually endorse any product. They're a standards body and an auditing body. They don't get into the world of adopting or recommending applications, but it was very good for us to know that both from the pen tester side of things and also from Cyber Essentials, we sailed through this update with aplomb, and it also has helped us position ourselves in the marketplace with a true differentiator between the other vendors that we have working in this space. So Droplet is very strong on the legacy side of the house. In terms of how old, this might shock you, but we have containerized DOS-based applications and even OS2 Warp. The oldest environment I've seen while I've been with Droplet was circa 1986, based on NT351 and other components. So we can go very deep into legacy, and that's something we see a lot in manufacturing and infrastructure environments, where a particular system may have an operating shelf life of 20, 30, 40 years. Often the entire lifetime of anybody who works within that business, that particular piece of application will be needed to be supported. Where the pain point seems to exist for kind of more business orientated people like retailers and people working in insurance and banking and anywhere places like that is the kind of Windows XP, Windows 7 era on the client side, and then on the server side, the sort of 2008 era. That still is very present in a lot of people's environments. The main thing to mention is that we are very neutral in terms of how we run. We will operate on platforms like Hyper-V, vSphere, but in terms of the cloud, we support AWS and Azure. We don't really care too much where you want to run Droplet. I'd have to say that's a factor of the modern world where workloads have been unshackled from the various platforms where they used to be, and workloads and applications are much more portable. And as a reality, we have to be able to do that ourselves. But we often do help with people who are going down the road of adopting cloud, but they still have a significant on-premise infrastructure, which they are gradually wanting to unwind and move everything into Microsoft Azure or into AWS. The good news from a Droplet perspective is because we don't care what the underlying platform is, we're just a bunch of flat files, it's very easy to move a on-premise solution to being in Azure, simply copying files around and back again. So we've certainly gone into the cloud and out of the cloud with very little change. On the client side, we support with our Droplet client, Chrome, Windows, Linux, Mac OS. It'll be of no surprise to anybody listening to this call that Windows does dominate because of the market share. But we've got a significant user base, usually within the academic sector, who are using Mac OS, and in the education sector, where Chrome has been adopted as the platform, because it's very thin, very robust, very easy to reset the environment when students have been tinkering and changing things in the environment. So we deploy our apps once and we can run on any system without having to modify, which makes us very portable from one system to another. As I mentioned earlier, we're secure by design because from day one, we're a true isolation layer. I should add that although we use the term container, we are not based on Docker and we do not use Kubernetes. A Droplet container uses proprietary software that we have deployed and developed in-house, been operating just over 5 or 6 years in that particular way. And obviously the main goal is to achieve Cyber Essentials or NIST compliant. Part of our security is baked into the product. The way we run is a true isolation layer. But also the networking side of the things that we do is where security is paramount. And we've kind of trademarked a name called Never Trust to describe what we do. And it's a bit of a pun on the zero trust model that has become popular. What makes us different from zero trust and why we coined the term Never Trust is a lot of zero trust models are highly dependent on AI and machine learning models to detect abnormal behavior and shut it down before it's allowed to proceed. Despite what the media say about AI and machine learning, it's a relatively new technology, and it's really only as good as the algorithm that powers it. And so what the bad guys are always trying to do is find new ways to spoof and fool that AI machine learning system. So if it's something it's never seen before, its machine learning may help with pattern matching, but if it's unique enough, that machine learning might not help. And therefore you depend on the AI model to basically look at that activity and say whether it's good or bad. What makes Never Trust different is we block all inbound and outbound traffic by default. So nothing can get in and out. The only way a user can get to the application or to the server is with our client, which has to be installed by the administrator, protected by admin rights. And any traffic that traverses from the end user to the server and back again is encrypted with the latest encryption technologies. We don't actually use certificates to do our encryption. We use something else, something proprietary, because we don't think certificates are secure enough, which perhaps gives you an idea of the level of encryption and security that we're aiming for. The kind of encryption and security that we use is typically used inside the military defense and intelligence services community as a standard for encryption. And indeed, we had to use that level of encryption because they're one of our customers. You know, as you might suspect, a lot of defense establishments run on quite old software and equipment because it's in theater for potentially decades. It has to be absolutely rock solid and robust, that software stack. So there's a tendency to have very stringent change management, and that stringent change management prevents adopting the latest ones and zeros, because that stability and security is more important than new features or a new way of doing something. Using our never trust model together with existing zero trust approaches is a significant uplift on your security posture, which should leave you almost immune to any zero-day or ransomware attacks, especially around the legacy area. If an attacker came into your environment looking for a legacy component and Droplet was there, they simply wouldn't see it. They would see a small piece of software installed to the PC, and then on the server side, they would see a modern Linux environment running on a modern cloud environment or a modern vSphere or Hyper-V environment. They simply would not see or have any connectivity to the legacy component. We're very, very scalable. Droplet server appliance can be scaled up by adding more CPU and more memory. And a Droplet server appliance can be scaled out by having more than one and backing that scaled out environment with a load balancer. You can bring your own load balancer to Droplet if you prefer it. So if you've got something like Citrix NetScaler or ADC or something like F5 Big IP, you can bring that to a load balancer. If you're in the cloud, people like Microsoft Azure and Amazon AWS offer their own region-protected load balancing technologies. If you're a smaller organization where you're on-prem and you're not using those load balancing technologies, Droplet does ship with a free built-in load balancer. It's actually based on Linux HA proxy. And we've developed that specifically with our product in mind. So you just start it up, type in some IP addresses, and off you go. But it's really a courtesy feature for those customers who don't want to spend money on either developing their own load balancing technology or buying a commercial load balancer. Little support is required with Droplet. All of the support really is up front in the shape of a proof of concept and being there during the deployment process. And so a lot of the kinks and a lot of the issues are ironed out during that particular period. And as mentioned already, we deploy to any endpoint or device. Last thing to mention from the PowerPoint deck perspective is what we do for servers. Now, I know Mark put the emphasis on end user computing, mentioning Windows XP and Windows 7, Windows 8, and things like that. But we do support the containerization or the dropletization, if you prefer that term, of servers as well. Specifically, we focus on 2003 and 2008 and 2012 environments, but we can do Linux. We can actually run Server 2016 in our environment and Windows NT. So the server operating systems listed here are purely the ones that we see the most frequent of. We have our own conversion tools that will take any physical system and any virtual system into a Droplet environment. And this is also used not just with servers, but with clients. So if you've got an aging Windows 7 PC with a number of applications and you've lost the installer and you don't have any instructions for it and the licenses are missing and the vendor of that software has gone out of business, we can still help. We can take that Windows 7 PC and convert it into a Droplet container and make that application available to hundreds of users. So we're often a get out of jail card for customers who have a pain point like that, and they've spent the last couple of months worrying about whether that hardware would fail or going out and buying spare components or duplicates of that hardware to have some sort of plan B. We can get you to turn off that PC and put it where it should really live, which is in a skip, and actually have that software there in a platform which is modern and durable. So that's the end of the death by PowerPoint. What I want to do is actually spend as much time as possible showing you the product, because seeing is believing, and for a lot of people, seeing is understanding. PowerPoint slides can get very abstract and very dry in a very short period of time. So what I'm showing you here is my vSphere environment. Just for disclosure, I'm former VMware, so I have a preference to doing all my demos and my work in a vSphere environment. I still run a home lab to do that. I've got a copy of one of our appliances running in a virtual machine. It'll come as no surprise to you that that virtual machine runs a copy of Linux, which we have super hardened and then sprinkled our software into that Linux environment. When I speak to C-suite people, CTOs and CEOs, I like to say Droplet is a mix of open source and secret source. So it's the secret source of Droplet that really makes the difference. Yeah. Running inside that appliance is a number of Droplet containers. Yeah. So I've got a Droplet container that I use for delivering modern applications, and a Droplet container that I use for running legacy. The way software is installed into the Droplet container is exactly the same way as if you were doing it to a physical PC or to a vSphere virtual machine. You get hold of the setup file and you run the installer. Yeah, there is a little bit of post configuration, but it's minimal. It takes less than 2 or 3 hours to set up all this environment. Yeah. So that's one thing I just want to qualify slightly in the way we're discussing Droplet today. We've made a big emphasis on legacy and a big emphasis on security, because that's our kind of raison d'etre, but you can deliver modern applications with Droplet as well. There's a couple of use cases around that. Some customers do have software that runs on Windows 10 or Windows 11, but it takes a team of people with white coats to make that actually work. Yeah. And there's an anxiety that a Microsoft update will come along and break the application because it's a bit fragile. Sometimes those applications take a long time to set up and tweak and make work, and that can become a bit of a burden. So what customers are looking for is an easy way in which to encapsulate that or dropletize that, and then capture that as a point in state, so they can reproduce that very, very quickly for lots and lots of users. The other thing that we see with a lot of modern applications is, yes, the application is modern, but its dependencies, Java, .NET, Visual Studio Runtime, are actually legacy. And that's where you fall foul of a Cyber Essentials model. Alongside these containers that we provide, we also have containers that we use for demonstrations of our sort of server-side stuff. Yeah. So this container is running Windows 12. This container is running 2008, and this container is running 2003. These were originally taken from my vSphere environment and have actually been through the conversion process I was talking about. So one way of kind of imagining what Droplet is like is imagine that we're like a bubble of security wrapped around the actual legacy layer. Sequential layers of isolation that makes it almost impossible for a hacker to get in. I say almost impossible. No pen test has ever been able to breach a Droplet container, but of course we're constantly going through the process of qualifying our software and making it more and more secure. Yep. So we do servers as well, and we do modern applications as well, which is a little bit of a qualification on this emphasis on legacy. Let me show you what the end user experience looks like. Yeah. So here is a Windows 11 based system. I'm pleased to tell you that when Windows 11 was launched, we were able to install our software to Windows 11 and it worked straight away out of the box with no modifications made by our developers. And I take that as an indication of how isolated that we are from the underlying OS, that our software needed no revisions to carry on running on a newer version of the operating system. Usually in the world of software development, a new OS means potentially multiple years of development to make sure the software runs on that system, and we had to make no changes whatsoever. So the client software from Droplet is already loaded in my system tray. This is what it looks like. Yeah, it's extremely lightweight. It's only about 100 megabytes in size. And then a small set of config files are used to kind of skin up the application itself. For the most part, end users don't actually interact with this UI at all. Yeah, what they get is a series of icons on their desktop that when they open, they get their application. So here I've got a sample legacy application. It's an extremely old version of Microsoft Office. It's the 2003 version. I think it's fair to say, though, that not many customers use Droplet to run something like Microsoft Office. 9 times out of 10, what they're actually doing is running a piece of software which is either very specific to their organization or very, very specific to their industry, yeah, and the environment. Yeah. So here's 2 examples. The application on the left is used by Bombardier, who create trains, to monitor and monitor their battery systems on a train. The app here on the right is a flexi calculator, which was developed by a local council. So our engineers are very, very used to seeing the weird and wonderful applications that they've never ever seen before because they've not worked in that particular sector. That said, a lot of our engineers have been around for some time. Some of them are 30-year career veterans, and they've been with Droplet for 4 or 5 years. And what we do see is very common applications from one vendor to another. So, for example, within the energy sector and within, say, all the water companies, there's an application called Click Schedule, which dominates the entire industry. And that app, Click Schedule, only works with IE11. It's based on a 2008 web server, and it's what they use to manage all their engineers and all their visits to various businesses, customer sites, monitoring jobs and things like it. So often we do see the same applications coming up from one vendor to another. As mentioned just a moment ago, we can deliver modern applications, again, with the same degree of performance. So you won't see any performance distance between running a legacy application and running a modern application. In fact, a lot of the times what we get from customers is we find that it runs faster and quicker under Droplet. Now, I'd love to say it's the secret sauce of Droplet that makes a legacy or modern application run quicker. But 9 times out of 10, what is actually creating the improvement of performance is being on a more modern platform, but also that Linux layer, which is extremely thin and extremely performance efficient. It just means that we get all these efficiencies from the infrastructure that's there. To close with, I want to give you just one last example, which is the both of the technologies together. So here I'm opening a very old web browser, yeah, that's being delivered remotely across the network. It's actually IE8, yeah, which technically will not run on Windows 11. You just kind of install it. Although it looks like it's running locally on the Windows 11 system, if a Cyber Essentials audit came in, they wouldn't actually see IE8. They'd see the Droplet client, but they wouldn't see IE8 on that system, and therefore it would pass. Everything that's going to and fro here between the various web servers I'm clicking is encrypted by our own proprietary security standards. So there's no possibility of anybody being able to intersect the traffic between the client and the server because of the encryption standards that we're actually using. And of course, what this web browser is connecting to is this particular web server, yeah, based on 2003. In fact, there isn't really any security around this at all from a networking perspective. That's provided by the OS. All the encryption is being provided and added by Droplet. So to summarize, Droplet, I would say about 75% of our customers are running legacy software, and the other 25% are using us to deliver modern applications. We have a Droplet server appliance, which can be used to deliver just an end user application or a server environment as well, or the two together. Yeah, I should add that we do have the software to run a Droplet container locally on the endpoint inside Windows 10 and inside Windows 11 in an offline model that doesn't have any network requirements at all. And we do have a number of customers using that local container, which executes on the Windows 10 system using the memory and the CPU and the disk capacity of that Windows 10 system to deliver it. We're about legacy and modern, are about creating an isolation layer such that the application is protected and will meet the Cyber Essentials security standards, as demonstrated by external pen testers, as demonstrated by very large energy organizations in nuclear facilities and MOD customers as well. Well, I can see I'm right on the hour of 11:30, so I'm going to stop there and I'll hand back to Mark to sort of do the wrap up for us. Thank you very much, Mark.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you everyone who joined. Thank you for your time today. I hope you found the webinar useful. What we will be doing following this session is we'll be sending out some summary PDFs for you to review all of the information that we shared. And obviously, we'd be really happy to hear from you if you've got any questions on this. And equally, if you've got any problem applications and you'd like to understand how quickly and easily we could look at this, we'd love to hear from you with a bit of a Pepsi challenge to see if we can get them up and running for you. Right, thank you all, and I will close the webinar off now. Okay.
You want to stop the recording?
Yeah.